Attention F1 fans, welcome to F1 Max. Are you ready to take a look at the major risk threatening Mercedes after the Spanish Grand Prix? You might think that team boss Toto Wolff would be thrilled with his team's double podium in Spain, but there is something concerning Merc that could be a real issue for them moving forwards. In this video, we're going to take a look at the massive risk facing Mercedes, as well as whether Mercedes' fortunes have actually changed with these new upgrades. Let's dive into the video. No other way to describe it really. Mercedes have been terrible this season. I mean, just awful. This was hoped to be a bounce-back season for Merc. Maybe we could have even seen Lewis Hamilton back contending for race wins. We've seen pretty much the opposite of that so far this season. Merc have often been the fourth fastest team on the grid, being overtaken by Aston Martin at times this season. In terms of straight pace, the Merc has struggled, particularly in Baku and Bahrain. But this weekend, things really changed for Mercedes, on a track which they have a mixed history on. This circuit was of course the site of the infamous crash between Lewis and Nico Rosberg that started a beef between the two of them. Despite a minor bump between the two teammates during the weekend, Mercedes still came home to their best performance of the season. This was their second and third podium of the season, as well as George Russell's first podium of the season. There was a bit of luck associated with it, thanks to Sergio Perez having a terrible time in qualifying. Russell's performance was particularly impressive, fighting back from an equally disappointing qualifying to get onto the podium ahead of Checo. It doesn't take an F1 expert to realise that with a few more laps, George would have been under pressure massively for his podium. But that didn't matter in the end, and the result was able to take Mercedes from third to second in the constructors' standings. They now have an 18-point lead over Aston Martin. Ferrari are far back from Merc now. It seems like Mercedes might have things worked out. A big part of that success has come from the upgrades that Mercedes brought to Spain. It doesn't take an F1 genius to realise that whatever Mercedes were doing with their car was not working. Drastic changes were needed, but often Mercedes had said that they would not make drastic changes, as they did not want to go even further back in the field. After persisting with a similar setup for the first 5 races of the season, the Silver Arrows brought big upgrades to Monaco. However, bringing big upgrades to Monaco is a bit pointless really. You're not going to see the full extent of the changes on a track where you'd be lucky to see more than one overtake in the entire race. Spain was the first race in which we could see how Mercedes upgrades were working. So Lewis and George will be thrilled that the upgrade package certainly looks like it is working. But not everyone at the team is completely satisfied with the upgrades. Toto Wolff seems to be the more reserved voice in the Mercedes garage at the moment. While the boss is pleased with Mercedes' upgrades so far, there is a big risk that could hurt the team further into the season. Given how extensive the upgrades that Mercedes bought are, Toto Wolff is concerned that such drastic changes could have long-term effects the team have not seen yet. This new setup has had very little testing, as it had been bought in mid-season. Teams usually have months to test a new setup. But by bringing the upgrades in midway through the season, there could be long-term issues that hurt this car. Maybe the upgrades have made the Mercedes less reliable, or maybe the upgrades suited the Catalonia track and will struggle at others. We've yet to see the Mercedes at a track where top speed is crucial. Some of the media were writing about Mercedes catching up to Red Bull after these upgrades, but Toto Wolff has pleaded for everyone to slow down a bit on their excitement. Toto Wolff spoke to the media after the race, saying, "I'm very happy with the hard work that's been done at Brackley and Brixworth. We took some decisions to go in another direction. We changed so many parts and it was a risk, but everybody just pushed forward." There is no doubt the factory have done a great job bringing these upgrades in, especially as this will have also meant all the hard work on the previous setup will have gone right in the bin. But Toto was still cautious in the success of the upgrades. He added, "We need to be realistic. The temperature really suited us. It was nice and fresh, not too cold and not too hot. The car was in a great window." He added that Mercedes still need to go a long way to be able to catch up to where Red Bull are on track. Wolff said, "It's a long way to catch up to Red Bull, and we just need to grind away. It's good to see the development direction is right, but this is just the beginning." Don't worry, not everyone at Mercedes was so down about the upgrades. In fact, Lewis Hamilton was very punchy about his team. He spoke to the BBC Checkered Flag podcast after the race, explaining, "We just got to try and keep this up. For us to be quicker than the Ferraris and the Astons today was really mega." The 7-time world champion doubled down on his positive attitude about his car. He said, "I like to look at the glass half full, so I think we generally had better pace than them. I think collectively as a team, we generally just did a better job." This was in reference to the poor pace of the team's rivals, Aston Martin and Ferrari. Hamilton added, "We made less mistakes, we delivered through the sessions, and we had a great strategy today. So things could be looking up for Mercedes going forward." Some fans have said that Mercedes' excellent result in Spain was more to do with the poor pace of Sergio Perez as well as Aston Martin and Ferrari. I think that's incredibly harsh on the hard work that Mercedes have done to improve their car. The W14 comfortably looked like the second fastest car throughout the weekend. It seemed to handle the medium-speed corners very well and still showed good pace on the straights. We saw very little complaining from either driver about the car being difficult to drive. Now there is still some caution needed. This is just one race where we've seen Mercedes improve, and they have a very different test ahead of them as Formula 1 heads to Canada. The next track will really test how the Mercedes developments have affected their straight-line speed. But why not be a little bit positive about Mercedes at the moment? Their fans have certainly not had a lot to be positive about this summer, so these upgrades should be seen as a good thing. Despite both of their drivers being on the podium this weekend, things weren't perfect for the Silver Arrows. Qualifying tends to throw up a lot more chaos than you might think, and we saw the on-track traffic hurt the Mercedes. In the second part of qualifying, the Mercedes were following each other down the home straight. As they were moving down the straight, Russell had to veer to the right to avoid a slow-moving Ferrari. As George did this, Lewis tries to pass him on the outside as he started a flying lap. George then moved slightly back across, right into the line where his teammate Hamilton was. The 7-time world champion had to slam on the brakes and take evasive action. There was contact between the two teammates, with replays showing some of Hamilton's front wing flying into the air. Lewis was quite quick to get on the radio saying to the team, "George just backed off. That's really dangerous. I might have some damage on the car." Russell was asked about the incident after qualifying. The former Williams driver explained, "No, I think it was just a big miscommunication. A lot of traffic on the outlap. I was just looking ahead trying to take the slipstream from Carlos, and the next thing I know, Lewis was there. Fortunately, nothing big happened." A lot of people have been pretty unhappy with George Russell after the contact in qualifying, especially those Mercedes fans who remember the last time that teammates crashed in Spain. That certainly did not end well for Mercedes. The contact has even led some to call for Mercedes to sack George Russell. British sports car driver Richard Bradley suggested that Mercedes should sack George for the contact in Spain. He makes the point that George should have been looking in his mirrors before the start of the lap. In a podcast interview, Bradley said, "There is absolutely no way he wouldn't have checked his mirrors before we started that lap. You always have to check before starting your push lap. He knew exactly where Lewis was. Everything he says is complete rubbish. He knew exactly what he was doing." That is just a very harsh way to look at it. What would George Russell have to gain from crashing into his teammate in qualifying? Even if he had done it on purpose, which is unlikely, it clearly did not help George. He finished qualifying in 12th place, while his teammate well outperformed him. The current Formula 1 cars are very difficult to see out of because of the halo and the massive wheel arches. Drivers rely on their teams to tell them about traffic on a lap. It is very likely that George will not have been able to see his teammate behind him, which is why the crash happened. It certainly wasn't reckless from George, and calling for his sacking is harsh. The warning he got from the FIA seems to be punishment enough for Russell. But what do you think about Mercedes' upgrades? Could they be the key to the Silver Arrows challenging Red Bull again? Why not put your thoughts in the comments down below? While you're down there, why not hit the like button and subscribe? If you enjoyed this video, why not check out another from the channel? Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.